Let's head down to Victoria now. Joining us is the Labor MP Peter Khalil. Peter, good to see you. Let's start off with these comments from Jim Chalmers. So Labor's going to commission the Federal Treasury to model the cost of climate change to the national economy. What's the difference between that option and what's currently going through industry department and consultancy groups?
Well, good morning, Pete. My understanding is that Treasury has not been utilised by the government for some 7 or 8 years, maybe longer.
Right. That's right.
That's right, yeah. In utilising Treasury's skills and abilities to do the modelling, it's part of what they do. Obviously, Treasury officials consider themselves some of the best public servants, and I think it's a very smart move by Jim to say that we would commit to utilising the Treasury Department in doing that kind of modelling, which is such an important issue about the cost of action on climate change. If there is cost, the cost of inaction on climate change, that modelling is critical for us to set the path to create that path for us that ensures our prosperity into the future.
But what is the difference between that and what the government is currently using at the moment, which is through the industry department and goes through consultancy groups as well? Is there much of a difference?
Well, you just said it. Part of that is outsourced to consultancy groups. It's not utilising the public service, or certainly not utilising the best of the economic departments in the public service, which is Treasury. I find it a bit odd, frankly, that the government has not used Treasury to do some of this work. It is the preeminent economic department, if you like, in our federal system in the Commonwealth, and they have just been left sitting on the bench, Pete. Would you leave your best player, your best midfielder, or whatever rugby term you use, your rower or whatever it is, fullback, whatever it is, sitting on the bench?
I don't row at all.
You don't row.
No.
Midfielder in the AFL.
Yeah.
Your best midfielder on the bench.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I take your point. Now, when it comes to Labor's climate policy, I know you're going to say it's all going to be announced in a couple of weeks' time, but I just want to get your personal inclination.
Sure.
Would it be your preference to go small target, perhaps marginally better what the government is proposing when it comes to 2030, or would you like or prefer to see something more ambitious?
My personal view, it's not just personal. I have a view that I would put in caucus, in the Labor caucus. Of course, as you mentioned, it's a determination, a decision made by our shadow cabinet. Then it goes to our caucus and we discuss it. So I'll have my say. It's not just personal. I actually think we should be setting targets that are in the best national interest of Australia as the starting point. A lot of that, frankly, Pete, and this is, you'll say, you're not giving me an answer. A lot of that is dependent upon the evidence base and the modelling that we do, some of the work that we might have to do to look into it. And that's difficult in opposition because we don't have Treasury, as an example, to do that very sophisticated work for us as an opposition. But I think we need to be really clear-eyed about the target. Obviously, it's when we had a 45% target at the last election in 2019, it was 11 years to 2030. Now it's going to be 8 years to 2030. So that needs to be taken into consideration. And I think the important thing, whether it's in mid-40s or whatever it might be, whatever the target might be, I don't know what the final decision will be. The really important thing is the policies that we will be announcing and putting in place to actually get us to that target. And also, more importantly, frankly, than the interim target, is will this see us as a pathway all the way through to net zero in 2050? And it's really dependent upon those policies. We've already announced $20 billion for renewable energy or the infrastructure onto the electricity grid. That's an important part of it. There'll be more announcements. So people are going to get wrapped up in the target. Is it going to be 40? Is it going to be 45? Is it going to be 35? What's actually important is the policies that will get us that interim target, but also get us to net zero in 2050. Did
Glasgow sign or signal the death knell of coal, in your opinion?
Well, Glasgow, look, it depends on your perspective, doesn't it, whether Glasgow is a success. It's very subjective. Depends on your perspective. They did do some good things. Obviously, they've worked out, they've come to agreements around a couple of things like, committing to that 1.5 degree increase. They've also improved the commitments around...
But Boris Johnson said that Glasgow basically signalled the death knell for coal. I mean, is that something that you agree with?
Well, in fact, the big emitters watered down the language of the text at the last moment. So you can make an argument that Boris is probably overreaching by making that statement. In fact, China, the US, and I think India all eventually changed the text. But the important point to note is that this is the first COP, I think, where they've actually even mentioned fossil fuels in the text. But then again, the text itself was then watered down by those big emitters. So I don't think that's the case. There is certainly a commitment to phasing down fossil fuels over time. But as I said, that the language has been watered down. Look, frankly, the reduction in emissions has to come from those big emitters, and countries around the world recognise that, and that's why there was some disappointment around the watering down of the text.
Okay, Peter Khalil. We're out of time. Good to see you, though. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.